That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over Fort Bragg, casting long shadows across the training fields, where the 82nd Airborne Division prepared for another day of drills. Dust swirled in the crisp North Carolina air as boots thudded in unison against the packed earth. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at attention in formation, her uniform crisp, the insignia on her shoulder gleaming under the early light. At her side, Rex, her German shepherd partner, sat rigid, ears perked, his black and tan coat still damp from the morning dew. The K9 unit had been integrated into the division's exercises for months now, a quiet addition to the rhythm of patrols and simulations, but Elena felt the weight of every stare when they ran joint ops. "Platoon attention!" The command echoed from Captain Harlan Reed, the unit's operations officer, his voice cutting through the low hum of idling Humvees. Soldiers snapped to, spines straight, eyes forward. Reed paced the line, his polished boots kicking up faint puffs of dirt. He was a veteran of 2 tours in Afghanistan, his face etched with the lines of decisions made under fire. Today marked the start of a week-long field exercise simulating urban breach scenarios. Nothing out of the ordinary for the 82nd, but the stakes felt higher with the K9 handlers woven in. Elena had joined the unit 6 months prior, transferred from Fort Benning after excelling in K9 detection training. Rex was her shadow, trained for explosives and narcotics, but their bond ran deeper, forged in late-night sessions where she'd whisper commands until he responded with a single, knowing glance. "Listen up," Reed continued, his gaze sweeping the ranks. "This exercise tests our chain of command under pressure. We move as one. Infantry leads, support follows. Vasquez, your team stays on perimeter, no deviations. Understood?" "Yes, sir," Elena replied, her voice steady. Rex shifted slightly at her heel, sensing the tension in her posture. She placed a gloved hand on his head, feeling the warmth of his fur against her palm. The other handlers nodded in unison. Sergeant Malik, with his Belgian Malinois, Luna, and Corporal Hayes with Patrol Dog Duke. They were a tight trio, bonded by the unspoken rule that their animals were extensions of themselves, senses sharper than any radar. The formation broke as the platoon divided into squads. Elena led Rex to the edge of the mock village setup, a cluster of plywood structures mimicking urban sprawl, chain-link fences marking off contaminated zones for the sim. Radio chatter crackled in her earpiece, coordinated movements, checkpoints cleared. The air smelled of diesel from the vehicles and the faint metallic tang of spent blank rounds from earlier drills. Rex paced beside her, his nails clicking softly on the concrete pads, simulating streets. As the exercise kicked off, the infantry squad advanced under covering fire, simulated bursts popping from M4 rifles. Elena's role was observation. Rex to sniff for hidden IEDs planted by role players. She crouched behind a barrier, scanning the perimeter, her heart sinking with Rex's steady breaths. Loyalty like theirs didn't come from words. It was in the way he'd freeze at a scent, saving lives without fanfare. Halfway through the rotation, the wind shifted, carrying the distant rumble of thunder from gathering clouds. The platoon pushed deeper into the mock compound, voices sharp over the comms. "Clear left, advancing to objective." Elena held position, but Rex grew restless, his nose twitching toward the fenced-off sector beyond the training area. A restricted zone bordering the base's old munition storage, off-limits during exercises to avoid interference. "Sit," she murmured, but Rex whined low. Pawing the ground, Elena frowned, following his gaze. The fence line was marked with yellow tape and signs. "Do not cross. Hazard area." Routine protocol kept them clear. The area held outdated gear, cleared years ago but still cordoned for safety. Then, From beyond the barrier came a sound, a faint, muffled cry, like a voice choked by distance or fear. Human, not animal. Elena froze, her pulse quickening. Rex strained against his lead, hackles rising. "Vasquez, report," Reed's voice barked in her earpiece. "Perimeter secure?" "Affirmative, sir," she responded automatically, but her eyes stayed on the fence. The cry came again, sharper this time, swallowed by the wind. It could be a civilian contractor or worse, a breach in protocol. Her training screamed caution. "Stay in bounds, follow the line." But conscience tugged harder. Rex pulled toward it, his body taut with instinct. Across the field, the squad paused at a simulated breach point, unaware. Elena glanced at her watch. Exercise clock ticking. Crossing meant defying direct orders, risking her spot in the unit. Handlers didn't improvise, they executed. Yet the cry echoed in her mind, pulling like a loose thread in the chain of command. She unclipped Rex's lead, her fingers steady, despite the knot in her stomach. "Easy, boy," she whispered. The dog's eyes met hers, trusting, ready. The fence loomed 20 yards away, tape fluttering like a warning. In that suspended moment, with the platoon drilling on and thunder rumbling closer, Elena faced the line, not just the physical barrier, but the invisible one between duty and what felt inescapably right. She took a step forward, Rex at her side, the world narrowing to the sound that no one else seemed to hear. Elena hesitated for a fraction of a second, the cry fading into the patter of rain, starting to speckle the ground. The fence loomed, its chain links glinting dully under the overcast sky. Protocol etched into her mind. Report anomalies up the chain. Secure the perimeter. Never breach without clearance. But Rex's low growl vibrated through her boot, his nose pressed to the earth, scenting something urgent beyond the tape. The dog's instincts had saved squads before, IEDs buried in sand, narcotics hidden in crates. This felt different, personal, like the cry was a thread pulling at the fabric of her resolve. She scanned the field. The platoon was 200 yards out, focused on the breach simulation, the crackle of blanks and shouted coordinates masking the storm's approach. No one watched her sector. Elena's hand tightened on Rex's collar, feeling the steady thrum of his pulse. "Stay close," she murmured, her voice lost in the wind. With a deep breath, she ducked under the tape, the plastic snagging her sleeve like a silent reprimand. Rex bounded ahead, then froze, ears flat, pointing toward a cluster of overgrown brush near the old storage bunkers. The restricted zone was a relic from the base's expansion decades ago, rusted shipping containers and weathered concrete pads. Cordoned off after a munitions audit deemed them low risk but still hazardous. Elena moved low, her M4 slung across her chest, boots sinking into the muddied grass. Rain slicked her helmet, blurring her vision, but she pushed on, the cry's echo urging her forward. It came again, weaker now, from behind a tilted container, a muffled sob, human and desperate. "Rex, search," she commanded softly, releasing him fully. The dog darted forward, weaving through debris with silent precision, his tail low. Elena followed, heart pounding in rhythm with the distant thunder. She rounded the corner, and there, slumped against the container's side, was Private First Class Tomas Ruiz, one of the base's logistics clerks. His uniform was soaked, face pale, a makeshift tourniquet around his thigh stained dark. Blood pooled beneath him, mixing with the rain. His eyes widened at the sight of her, relief flickering through the pain. "Vasquez, what the— Get me out!" he gasped, voice ragged. Rex circled him warily, sniffing the air, then sat at Elena's side, alerting without aggression. Elena dropped to one knee, assessing. The wound looked like a puncture, perhaps from rusted metal during an unauthorized shortcut, or worse, something deliberate. Ruiz wasn't assigned to this sector. Clark stuck to admin buildings. "Hold still. How'd you get here?" Slipped off the path during break, thought I could cut through, twisted wrong, hit something sharp. His words tumbled out, evasive, but the tremor in his hands betrayed more. Elena pulled her medkit from her vest, gloved fingers working quickly to reinforce the tourniquet. The rain hammered down now, turning the ground to slurry. She keyed her radio, thumb hovering over the transmit. Reporting now meant admitting the breach. Orders defied in front of the whole exercise, but Ruiz's color was fading, shock setting in. "Sir, this is Vasquez. Perimeter breach. Possible injury in restricted zone. Request evac." Static crackled, then Captain Reed's voice sharp as a blade. "Vasquez, repeat that. You're on perimeter duty. Confirm position." She glanced at Ruiz, his breathing shallow. Rex pressed against her leg, whining softly, sensing the urgency. "Affirmative, sir. I've got a man down. Civilian sector adjacent. Need corpsman now?" A pause, heavy with implication. "Stand by, do not move him, that's an order." The line went dead, but not before she caught the undercurrent of anger. Elena secured the bandage, her mind racing. Moving him risked more damage, but waiting in this downpour could cost his leg. Or worse, the chain of command was clear: hold position, await support. Yet here she was. Already across the line, her loyalty split between protocol and the man bleeding out before her. Minutes stretched like hours. Rex paced a tight circle, his wet fur matting against his sides, eyes fixed on the fence. Elena shielded Ruiz with her body, the rain chilling her to the bone. Footsteps squelched in the distance, two figures approaching through the storm. Sergeant Malik from her K9 team and a corpsman, kit in hand. Malik's face was a mask of controlled fury as he ducked under the tape, Luna at his heel. "What the hell, Elena?" Malik hissed, keeping his voice low as the corpsman knelt to examine Ruiz. "Reed's ripping into comms. You crossed into no man's land?" Heard a cry. Couldn't ignore it. She met his gaze, unyielding, even as doubt gnawed at her. Rex nudged her hand, a silent affirmation. The corpsman worked efficiently, stabilizing Ruiz for transport. "He's stable enough to move. Femoral nick. Lucky it wasn't arterial." They rigged a hasty litter from poles and ponchos, carrying him back across the line as thunder rolled overhead. By the time they reached the main field, the exercise had halted. Squads huddled under tarps, eyes turning toward the commotion. Captain Reed waited at the edge, arms crossed, his expression thunderous. Water streamed from his cap, but his posture was ramrod straight. "Vasquez, report. Now." She stood at attention, Rex dripping at her side, the platoon watching from the shadows. "Sir, during perimeter scan, I detected a distress call from the restricted zone. Investigated with Rex, found PFC Ruiz injured, provided aid and called for evac." Reed's jaw tightened. "You were ordered to hold the line, no deviations. That zone's off limits for a reason. Structural hazards, potential contaminants. Your actions just compromised the entire sim." Elena felt the weight of the stairs, the rain masking the flush on her cheeks. "Understood, sir. But he was in immediate danger. Rex alerted. Excuses later. Debrief in my office, post-exercise." He turned to the corpsman. "Get Ruiz to medical, double time." As the litter bearers moved off, Reed's voice dropped. "Handlers follow orders, Sergeant, or they don't handle." The platoon dispersed under the downpour, murmurs rippling like the water on the ground. Malik clapped her shoulder briefly as they passed, solidarity unspoken, while Luna shook off the rain beside Rex. Elena led her partner back to their post, the fence now a stark reminder behind her. The cry had been real, the save undeniable, but the cost was already mounting. In the rigid world of ranks and routines, one step across the line could unravel everything: her career, the unit's trust, the quiet bond she'd built with Rex through countless drills. As the storm eased into a steady drizzle, Elena knelt to dry Rex's face with a cloth from her pack. His eyes met hers, calm and unwavering, a mirror to the loyalty that had driven her forward. But in the quiet aftermath, with the base's lights flickering on against the grey, she wondered if conscience could coexist with command, or if this defiance would demand a reckoning far beyond the mud and rain. The exercise resumed in the distance, boots thudding once more. But for Elena, the true test had only just begun. The debrief room in the operations tent smelled of damp canvas and stale coffee, the air thick with the residue of the storm. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the folding tables lined with clipboards and maps. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at ease before Captain Reed's desk, her boots still caked with mud from the field. Rex settled quietly at her feet. The dog's ears twitched at every creak of the tent flaps, but he remained still, a dark silhouette against the scuffed linoleum. Outside, the drizzle had softened to a mist, muffling the distant calls of squads wrapping up the halted exercise. Reed leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, his uniform jacket unbuttoned for the first time that day. Flanking him were First Sergeant Kowalski, the platoon sergeant with a no-nonsense stare honed from 20 years in the ranks, and Lieutenant Patel, the JAG officer called in from base legal for what Reed had termed a preliminary review. The room felt smaller than usual, the weight of scrutiny pressing in like the humid air. "Vasquez," Reed began, his voice even but edged with steel. "Walk us through it again, from the moment you heard the cry." Eleanor kept her gaze level, hands clasped behind her back. "Sir, during perimeter observation, Rex alerted to an anomaly beyond the fence line. I confirmed a distress signal, human vocalization. Protocol for K9 handlers in Sims is to report and hold, but the immediacy suggested potential casualty. I assessed risk, low visibility due to weather, no active threats in sector, proceeded with Rex to investigate." Kowalski shifted, his chair scraping the floor. "Assessed on your own, without comms check-in first?" His tone was gruff, the kind that came from enforcing discipline in foxholes, not questioning it. "Affirmative, First Sergeant. The signal was intermittent. Delay could have escalated the situation." She glanced down briefly at Rex, who met her eyes with a subtle tilt of his head, as if underscoring her words. The bond between them was no secret in the unit. Handlers often spoke of their dogs as partners, not pets, but in this room it felt like a vulnerability. Patel jotted notes on a legal pad, her pen scratching softly. "And PFC Ruiz? His account aligns. He admits wandering off-path during a smoke break, injuring himself on debris. No foul play suspected. But Sergeant, the restricted zone carries explicit prohibitions. Article 92, failure to obey order or regulation. You crossed a marked boundary." Elena nodded once, the motion precise. "Understood, ma'am. My intent was aid, not disregard. Rex's detection capabilities are certified for such scenarios. He's flagged hazards in training that saved mock casualties." Reed's eyes narrowed, flipping through the incident report. Photos from the scene, fence tape torn, muddied boot prints, Ruiz's pale face on a stretcher, were pinned to a board behind him. Intent's one thing, execution's another. This wasn't a hot zone, it was a sim. Your deviation halted the exercise, cost us 2 hours of daylight, and now we've got brass from division inquiring. Why risk it for a clerk who should have known better? The question hung, probing deeper than procedure. Elena felt the pull of the chain, Reed's authority, the unit's cohesion, her own record spotless until now. Loyalty to the team meant falling in line, but the cry, raw, unfiltered, still echoed in her ears. "Sir, handlers train for instinct under pressure." Rex didn't hesitate. Neither did I. Leaving him there wasn't an option. A beat of silence, broken only by the patter of rain on the tent roof. Kowalski cleared his throat. Loyalty to the dog, commendable, but the line's there for a reason. Structural integrity in that zone's questionable. One wrong step, and you're both casualties. Patel's pen paused. We'll need statements from witnesses. Sergeant Malik corroborated your alert, but the platoon saw the evac. Rumors are spreading. Some call it heroism, others insubordination. This could go to formal inquiry if division pushes. Reed stood, signaling the end. Vasquez, you're restricted to base duties pending review. No field ops until cleared. Report to the kennels for Rex's maintenance. Keep him sharp. Dismissed. Elena saluted sharply, Rex rising fluidly to her side. As she exited, the mist clung to her skin, cooling the flush of resolve and regret. The base paths were slick underfoot, soldiers in ponchos glancing her way, whispers carried on the wind, fragments of "heard she went rogue" and "saved the kid's leg." She led Rex to the K9 Annex, a low concrete building humming with the low whir of fans drying gear. Inside, the air was warmer, scented with kibble and leather, a sanctuary amid the scrutiny. Sergeant Malik was there, toweling off Luna, his Malinois sprawled contentedly nearby. He looked up, expression guarded but not unkind. "Rough in there." "Standard drill," Elena replied, filling Rex's bowl with fresh water. The dog lapped steadily, his tail thumping once against the floor. She knelt to check his paws for cuts from the brush, her fingers gentle on the pads. "Reads by the book, always has been." Malik nodded, leaning against a grooming station. "Yeah, but this hit's different. Ruiz is stable. Docs say he'll walk without a limp. Word from medical. That tourniquet you applied bought him time. Still, crossing the line. Sets a precedent. Handlers tow it, or we all pay." Elena straightened, meeting his eyes. The quiet bond among them, forged in shared patrols, late-night alerts, made his words sting less. "Precedent for what? Ignoring a call when it counts?" Rex heard it first. "That's our edge." He sighed, rubbing Luna's ears. "Edge or liability? Brass sees deviation, they clip wings. Remember Hayes last year? One off-script search, and he's sidelined to admin." Luna whined softly, sensing the tension, and Malik scratched her flank. "Just watch your six. Unit's got your back, but command?" The door swung open, admitting Corporal Hayes with Duke on a loose lead. The Labrador's coat was still damp, but his eyes lit with recognition as he bounded to Rex. "Heard about the showdown. Platoon's buzzing. Some think you're due a commendation. Others say you're testing Reed's patience." Elena managed a tight smile, clipping a brush to her belt. "Let them buzz. Focus on the job." But as she worked through Rex's coat, removing burrs from the restricted zone's undergrowth, doubt crept in. The institutional machine ground slow. Inquiries, reports, the ripple of one choice across careers. Her defiance had pulled Ruiz from the brink, but at what cost to the order she swore to uphold. Evening fell, the base lights pooling gold on wet pavement. Eleanor walked Rex along the perimeter paths, the fence line now a shadowed scar in the distance. He trotted close, shoulder-brushing her leg, his presence a steady anchor. In the rigid hierarchy of ranks and routines, loyalty like theirs was the unspoken code. Dog to handler, handler to team. Yet as patrols resumed under sodium lamps, the reckoning loomed, a test of whether conscience could bend the chain without breaking it. Back in quarters, Elena reviewed her logbook by desk light, the pen heavy in her hand. Rex curled at her feet, breathing even in sleep. The cry that started it all replayed in her mind, a pivot point. Tomorrow's review would demand answers, witnesses, perhaps even Ruiz's testimony. But in the quiet, with the base settling into night, she knew the true measure wasn't in orders followed, but in the moral line she'd crossed and the legacy it might forge. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The morning after the debrief, The base stirred under a pale sun that did little to dispel the chill lingering in the air. Fort Bragg's training grounds hummed with subdued activity, Humvees rumbling along access roads, the sharp crack of rifle drills echoing from distant ranges. Sergeant Elena Vasquez reported to the K9 Annex at 600 sharp, her uniform pressed, boots polished, despite the mud stains scrubbed from yesterday's ordeal. Rex trotted at her heel, his leash clipped short, the click of his nails on the concrete, a rhythmic counterpoint to her measured steps. The dog's coat gleamed after a thorough grooming, but Elena noted the subtle tension in his gait, as if he sensed the shift in her routine. Inside the annex, the familiar scents enveloped her, oiled leather from harnesses, the earthy tang of dog food bins, and the faint antiseptic from medical stations. Sergeant Malik was already there, running Luna through obedience drills in the enclosed yard, his commands crisp over the low whir of ventilation fans. "Heel, sit." Luna complied flawlessly, her sleek form a blur of precision. Malik glanced up as Elena entered, nodding once before returning to his work. No words passed. The K9 team's code was action over chatter, especially now. Elena secured Rex in his run, filling his water dish and checking the feed schedule on the wall chart. Restricted duties meant no field time, just maintenance logs, equipment inventories, and the occasional demo for new arrivals. It chafed against her training, the idleness a quiet erosion of purpose. As she inventoried detection vests, the annex door banged open, admitting Corporal Hayes and Duke. The Labrador's tail wagged once, a brief spark of normalcy before Hayes' expression sobered. "Legal's calling witnesses," Hayes said, voice low as he latched Duke's gate. "Patel's putting together a full statement board. Reed wants the platoon in the mess hall at Euro 900 for a unit brief. Your name's on the roster." Elena paused, gloved hands folding a vest with deliberate care. "Standard procedure. They'll hash it out. Clear the air." Hayes snorted softly, clipping Duke's grooming brush. "Air's already thick," word from the clerk's barracks. "Ruiz is talking to anyone who'll listen. Says you came out of nowhere like an angel with a dog." Brass heard it. Now it's snowballing. She met his eyes, steady. "He was down. We got him up. That's the job." Before Hayes could reply, a runner from operations appeared at the door, rain poncho dripping onto the threshold. "Sergeant Vasquez, Captain Reed requests your presence in the briefing tent. Bring your logbook." Elena saluted, clipping Rex's lead for the short walk across base. The paths were drying, puddles reflecting the overcast sky, and soldiers parted slightly as she passed. Eyes lingering, murmurs trailing like radio static. The operations tent loomed ahead, its flaps tied back, revealing rows of folding chairs and a projector screen flickering to life. The platoon, assembled in sections, infantry squads on one side, support on the other, the K9 handlers clustered near the rear. Captain Reed stood at the front podium, flanked by First Sergeant Kowalski and Lieutenant Patel, who adjusted a stack of printed reports. "Take seats," Reed ordered as Elena entered, his gaze locking on her briefly before sweeping the room. The chairs scraped, boots thudding softly, the air heavy with the scent of wet canvas and fresh brewed coffee from a nearby urn. Rex settled under her chair, alert but unobtrusive, his presence drawing a few sidelong glances. Reed cleared his throat, the microphone amplifying the sound. "This brief addresses yesterday's incident during Exercise Thunderline. For those unaware, a deviation from protocol occurred in Sector 7, leading to the recovery of an injured service member. No fault on the exercise design. Our chain held firm. But one handler's actions warrant review to reinforce standards." Murmurs rippled, quickly quelled by Kowalski's glare. Elena sat straight, logbook on her knee, feeling the room's pulse quicken. Patel stepped forward, clicking through slides on the screen, maps of the perimeter, time-stamped photos of the fence breach, Ruiz's medical summary. PFC Ruiz sustained a laceration from debris in the restricted zone. Sergeant Vasquez's intervention stabilized him, preventing further blood loss. Commendable aid. However, the zone is designated off-limits per base reg 385-10. Hazards include unstable structures and residual contaminants. Crossing without clearance violates order. A hand rose from the infantry section. Private Ellis, a wiry scout with a reputation for straight talk. "Ma'am, if she heard a cry, wasn't that cause for breach? K9's whole point is detection." Patel nodded neutrally. "Detection within bounds, yes, but judgment calls require comms approval. Precedent from last year's Fort Hood inquiry. Unauthorized entry led to a handler's reprimand." Reed interjected, voice firm. "This isn't debate club. We're a team. Orders ensure we function as one." Vasquez acted on instinct. Instincts trained, not freelance. Questions through chain only. The room shifted uneasily. Chairs creaking. From the back, Sergeant Malik spoke up, tone measured. "Sir, Rex alerted first. Handlers read the dog. It's doctrine. If we ignore that, what's the unit for?" Kowalski leaned in. "Doctrine applies in theater, not Sims. You toe the line, or it blurs for everyone." Elena felt Rex's warmth against her boot. His ears perked toward the podium. The discussion circled. Voices respectful but edged. Loyalty to her clashing with fealty to command. A corpsman from medical added Ruiz's status. "Walking with crutches, sir. Credits the sergeant with his mobility." Nods followed, subtle affirmations rippling through the ranks. Reed raised a hand, silencing the room. "Appreciate the input. Divisions reviewing for formal inquiry could mean NJP for Vasquez if charges stick. But let's be clear, this tests us all. Uphold the chain, or it weakens." He dismissed them with a nod, the projector clicking off. As the platoon filed out, shoulders brushing in the narrow exit, Elena caught fragments. She saved him, though. "Reed's got to cover his ass." Malik fell in beside her. Luna, padding silently. "Held your ground in there. Good." Outside, the sun broke through, casting long shadows across the quad. Elena unclipped Rex, letting him stretch on the grass, his nose questing the air. The brief had made it public. The reckoning no longer confined to debrief rooms. Whispers would spread to higher echelons, the institution's gears turning toward judgment. Her choice, born of that distant cry, now echoed in every salute, every sidelong look. By midday, she returned to the annex, logging the morning's inventory with mechanical precision. Hayes joined her, Duke gnawing a chew toy in the corner. Platoon split, but leaning your way. Even Kowalski muttered something about guts on the way out. Elena brushed Rex's flank, feeling the steady rise of his ribs. "Guts or not, it's the system's call." Yet as she reviewed the incident timeline in her log, timestamps of the cry, the breach, the evac, a quiet resolve settled. The line she'd crossed wasn't just fence wire, it was the boundary where duty met the human cost of delay. With the inquiry looming, witnesses aligning, the true test lay ahead, not in proving her actions right, but in whether the ranks would bend toward justice or snap back to unyielding order. Afternoon brought a summons to medical. Ruiz wanted to thank her personally. The ward smelled of bleach and beeping monitors, fluorescent lights humming overhead. He lay propped in bed, leg elevated, color returned to his face. "Sergeant, you didn't have to. I was stupid cutting through like that." She stood at parade rest, Rex sitting alert beside her. "Just doing what handlers do, Private. Heal up." His eyes flicked to the dog, gratitude softening his features. "Heard the reviews heating up. If they ask, I'll tell 'em straight. You crossed for me." Elena nodded once, the weight of testimony settling like a rucksack. Appreciate it. Focus on recovery. As she left, the base's rhythm pulsed on, drills calling, rotors whirring from the helipad. The public eye of the unit had turned, the moral tension coiling tighter, demanding the institution confront not just her defiance, but the conscience that fueled it. In the fading light, with Rex at her side, Elena walked back to quarters, the path ahead as uncertain as the storm-scarred fence. The inquiry tent on the edge of the training grounds felt like a pressure cooker, its olive-drab walls straining against the midday heat that seeped through the canvas. Fans whirred overhead, stirring the air thick with the scent of printer ink and polished brass. Sergeant Elena Vasquez entered at precisely 1300 hours, her boots echoing softly on the plywood floor. Rex heeling close with his lead taut. The dog's nose quivered at the unfamiliar mix of cologne and legal pads, but he remained composed, a silent sentinel at her side. Outside, the base thrummed with routine, trucks idling on gravel paths, the distant snap of salute practices. But inside, the atmosphere was charged, every glance weighted. Major Ellis Harlan, the presiding officer from Division JAG, sat at the head table, his uniform impeccable, a stack of red-tabbed folders before him. To his left was Lieutenant Patel, now in a more formal role, and Captain Reed, posture rigid, eyes fixed forward. Witnesses lined the folding chairs, Sergeant Malik, Corporal Hayes, and PFC Ruiz, who shifted uncomfortably on crutches, his bandaged leg extended. First, Sergeant Kowalski observed from the side, arms crossed, his presence a bulwark of enlisted perspective. Eleanor took her seat at the respondent's table, placing her logbook squarely before her, the leather cover worn from months of field notes. Major Harlan calling to order the Article 92 inquiry regarding the events of 14th October in Sector 7, Ellis announced, his voice carrying the clipped authority of a courtroom veteran. He adjusted his glasses, scanning the room. This is not a trial, but a fact-finding to assess compliance with base regulations. Sergeant Vasquez, you are the respondent. All statements under oath. Proceed with opening remarks, Captain. Reed stood, clearing his throat. Sir, the chain of command is the backbone of this division. During Exercise Thunderline, Sergeant Vasquez was assigned perimeter security. Orders were explicit. Hold position, no deviations into restricted zones. Her unauthorized entry halted operations, exposed personnel to hazards, and undermined discipline. While PFC Ruiz's injury was regrettable, protocol exists to prevent such risks. Harlan nodded, jotting a note. Noted. Lieutenant Patel for the respondent. Patel rose smoothly. Major, Sergeant Vasquez's actions align with K9 doctrine under FM 319. 17. K9 teams operate on heightened sensory input. The distress call constituted an immediate threat assessment. Her intervention saved Ruiz from hypovolemic shock, per medical testimony. This inquiry should evaluate not just the breach, but the moral imperative within our training. The room settled into a hush, broken only by the fan's hum and Rex's soft pant at Elena's feet. Harlan turned to her. Sergeant, state your account. Elena stood at attention, voice steady. Sir, at 0932 hours, during perimeter scan, Rex alerted to an auditory anomaly beyond the fence. Human distress vocalization, confirmed by intermittent cries. Weather conditions obscured visual checks. Delay risked escalation. I proceeded with Rex, located PFC Ruiz with a femoral laceration, applied tourniquet per combat lifesaver protocol, secured the scene, and requested evac via comms. Intent, preserve life, consistent with oath. Harlan's pen scratched. You received no prior clearance. Why not report first? Time critical, sir. Cries indicated imminent peril. Rex's alert corroborated. Dogs detect stress pheromones humans miss. Standing orders prioritize response in active scenarios. This mirrored one. Ruiz leaned forward on his crutches, sweat beading on his brow despite the fans. Sir, if I may, she got there fast. I was fading, blood everywhere in the rain. That dog found me. Without him, I'd be worse off. I take blame for wandering. "Oh, she saved my ass," Kowalski interjected from the side. "Appreciate the candor, Private, but wandering or not, the zone's marked for a reason. Old bunkers could collapse. One handler goes rogue. It invites chaos." Malik was called next, standing with measured poise. "Sir, as K9 lead, I've run ops with Vasquez. Rex is certified level 3 detection. His alerts have cleared routes in live fire. That cry? We all heard echoes later, but she acted. Unit cohesion means trusting instincts when protocol lags." Hayes followed, Duke absent, but his testimony echoing the team's bond. "Platoon saw the evac. Morale spiked, knowing she pulled him out. No one's questioning her skill. It's the line crossing that Brass hates." The questions circled, probing layers. Reed pressing on operational impact. 2 hours lost. SIM integrity compromised. Patel countering with precedents from Iraq deployments where handlers breached for casualties. Harlan listened impassively, flipping through exhibits. Comms logs showing Elena's call time-stamped seconds after the breach, Rex's certification papers stamped with high marks, Ruiz's chart noting timely intervention averted amputation. Elena felt the tension coil in her chest, Rex's paw pressing against her boot in subtle reassurance. The dog's warmth grounded her, a reminder of the loyalty that had propelled her across that fence. Whispers from the platoon had reached here, soldiers outside the tent, pretending to inspect gear, but ears tuned to the proceedings. This was the public reckoning, not just her fate, but the institution's mirror, reflecting how far duty stretched before snapping against conscience. Harlan paused the testimony, calling a recess. 15 mics, review exhibits. The room stirred, chairs scraping as witnesses filed out. Reed shot Elena a look, disapproval laced with reluctant respect, before exiting. Alone with Patel, Elena clipped Rex's lead, leading him to the tent flap for air. The sun beat down, glinting off dog tags on passing troops who nodded her way, silent solidarity in their strides. "You held steady," Patel murmured, reviewing notes. Ruiz's words carry weight. Enlisted testimony sways these things. Eleanor scratched Rex's ears, feeling the soft fold of skin. "It's not about sway, ma'am. It's what handlers do." The cry was real. Ignoring it breaks something deeper than regs. Outside, Malik waited, Luna at his side. Heard the back and forth. Brass is chewing on it. Division commanders involved now. Your story's rippling up. The recess ended too soon, the inquiry resuming with closing arguments. Reed reiterated order's sanctity. Patel framed Elena's choice as moral courage within the ranks. Harlan adjourned, promising findings within 48 hours. "This tests more than one soldier. Dismissed." As Elena exited into the glaring light, the base's pulse quickened. Rotors chopping air from a distant Blackhawk, boots marching in formation. Rex trotted close, his nose lifting to the breeze, carrying scents of pine and gun oil. The tent's shadow fell behind her, but the reckoning lingered, a pivot where personal defiance met institutional judgment. Whispers among the ranks grew, handlers gathering in the annex, infantry in the mess, debating the line between obedience and the human thread that bound them all. That evening, in the quiet of the K9 yard, Elena ran Rex through light drills, basic searches on planted scents. His responses sharp, despite the day's strain. The floodlights cast long shadows, the air cooling with the scent of damp earth. Malik joined, Luna mirroring Rex's paths. "Whatever Harlan decides, you've got the team. That cry, it woke something. Talk of updating SIM protocols for K9 alerts." She nodded, tossing a reward toy for Rex to fetch. The dog's joyful retrieve cut through the tension, a burst of uncomplicated trust. Yet as stars pricked the sky, Elena sensed the legacy forming, her crossing not an end, but a spark, challenging the rigid chain to flex toward justice. The inquiry's verdict loomed, but in Rex's unwavering gaze, she found the quiet strength to face it, loyalty's cost, paid in steps across forbidden lines. The verdict arrived on a crisp dawn that painted Fort Bragg's parade grounds in hues of gold and shadow, the air sharp with the scent of pine and dew-kissed grass. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at attention in Captain Reed's outer office, her uniform starched to perfection, Rex seated rigidly beside her, the dog's ears flicked toward the door, attuned to the muffled voices within, low tones of authority discussing fates sealed in folders. Elena's hands rested at her sides, fingers brushing the seam of her trousers, a subtle anchor against the uncertainty that had simmered since the inquiry's recess. 2 days had passed like a held breath, routine duties in the annex, stolen conversations with Malik and Hayes, the platoon's eyes following her every step. The door swung open, and First Sergeant Kowalski emerged, his face a mask of professional neutrality. "Vasquez, inside. Major Harlan's findings." She nodded once, clipping Rex's lead with a soft click, and entered the office. The room was spare, metal desk, flags flanking the walls, a single window framing the base's orderly sprawl. Major Harlan sat behind the desk, his posture unyielding, while Reed stood to one side, arms crossed. Lieutenant Patel occupied a side chair, her legal pad closed. No fan this time, the air hung still, heavy with implication. "At ease, Sergeant," Harlan began, gesturing to the chair opposite. Eleanor sat, Rex curling neatly at her feet, his warmth a quiet reassurance against her boot. "The inquiry has concluded. Your actions on 14th October, unauthorized entry into a restricted zone, in violation of Base Regulation 38510 and Article 92, the breach compromised exercise integrity and exposed you to documented hazards." Elena's pulse steadied, her gaze fixed on Harlan's insignia. She had prepared for this, nights reviewing doctrines, weighing the cry's urgency against the chain's rigidity. "Understood, sir." Harlan leaned forward, flipping open the report. "However, extenuating factors weigh heavily. PFC Ruiz's testimony, corroborated by medical records, confirms your intervention prevented severe complications. K9 alert protocols per FM 319. 17. Support sensory-driven responses in ambiguous threats. Witnesses from the platoon affirm no malice in your intent, only operational instinct." Reed shifted, his jaw tightening imperceptibly. "Sir, the chain—" Harlan raised a hand, silencing him. "The chain holds, Captain, but it must adapt. Division Command has reviewed, no formal charges. Sergeant Vasquez receives a letter of reprimand for the record. Procedural deviation noted, but also a commendation for life-saving actions. Restricted duties lifted immediately. Resume full ops." Relief flickered through Elena, masked by discipline, but Rex sensed it, a soft nudge of his nose against her knee. Patel's eyes met hers, a nod of quiet approval. Reed exhaled slowly, his expression thawing to reluctant acceptance. "Clear, sir. Sergeant, report to the annex for reassignment brief." Dismissed," Harlan added, his voice carrying a finality that rippled beyond the room. As Eleanor rose to salute, he continued, "One more. This incident prompts review of SIM protocols, K9 integration guidelines, enhanced for auditory and olfactory alerts in perimeter zones. Your log informed it." The words landed like a salute held too long, acknowledgement of the legacy her choice had sparked. Elena exited with measured steps, the base awakening around her, reveille horns blaring, squads forming for PT under the rising sun. Outside Reed's door, Kowalski waited, his gruff nod speaking volumes. "Handled it clean. Platoon's waiting. Mess hall 0800. Unofficial toast to the handler who bent the line right." By mid-morning, the K9 annex buzzed with subdued energy, the scent of fresh kibble mingling with leather polish as handlers prepped for the day's drills. Eleanor clipped Rex's detection vest, the straps buckling with familiar snaps, his tail giving a single restrained wag. Malik approached, Luna at his heel, a printed memo in hand, Division's interim update on protocol revisions. Brass moved fast. Your breach, it's in the footnotes now. Handlers get leeway for alerts in sims. Comms optional if life signs detected. Hayes joined them, Duke padding forward to sniff Rex in greeting. Heard from Ruiz. He's back at desk duty next week. Sent a note. Owe you and the mutt. Platoon's calling it the Vasquez rule already. Elena allowed a faint smile, securing her own gear. Not a rule, just what we train for. But inwardly, the shift registered. Her defiance, once a fracture, now a reinforcement in the institutional framework. The rigid hierarchy hadn't shattered. It had flexed, absorbing the moral tension into something stronger. The platoon brief in the mess hall unfolded under fluorescent lights, the clatter of trays giving way to attentive silence as Reed took the podium. Soldiers filled the benches, infantry in rows, support clustered, the K9 team at a central table. Rex lay underfoot, ears perked to the captain's voice. Update on Sector 7, Reed announced, his tone steady, the reprimand's edge softened by resolve. Inquiry closed, standards upheld, but we've learned. Effective immediately. K9 protocols expand. Handlers authorized for low-risk breaches on verified alerts. Vasquez's actions, flawed execution, sound judgment inform the change. She resumes duties. We all sharpen ours. Murmurs of approval swept the hall, chairs shifting as nods passed like relayed orders. Private Ellis from the Scouts raised a fist subtly, even Kowalski's stern face cracked with a half-smile. Ruiz, present on light duty, met Elena's eyes from across the room, gratitude etched in his posture, crutches propped nearby. Afterward, as the platoon dispersed to training fields, Malik clapped her shoulder. You sparked it, Elena. Loyalty like that, dog to handler, team to truth, it's what keeps us whole. The afternoon sun climbed high as Elena led Rex through a perimeter drill, the mock village's plywood walls casting familiar shadows. Boots crunched on gravel, radio chatter coordinating the squad's advance. Clear right, K9 sweeping. Rex moved fluidly, nose to the ground, pausing at a simulated hazard. His alert prompt, her confirmation seamless. No fence loomed this time, the line had blurred into protocol, her conscience woven into the chain. In the quiet moments between commands, Elena felt the human vulnerability beneath the discipline. The tremor in a handler's hand over a lead, the unspoken bond in Rex's steady gaze. Her career stood intact, reputation burnished rather than tarnished, but the true cost lingered in reflection, the isolation of that first step, the weight of eyes now turned to respect. As evening settled, the base's lights flickered on, helicopters humming toward dusk patrols. Elena walked Rex along the paths, the air cooling with scents of pine and distant diesel. The cry that started it all had faded, but its echo reformed the ranks. A testament to moral courage, where duty and compassion converged. In the institution's vast machinery, one handler's choice had etched a legacy of quiet reform, proving that integrity, tested under scrutiny, could guide the system toward light. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. Weeks had passed since the inquiry's verdict, and Fort Bragg's rhythms had absorbed the incident like a scar fading into the landscape, subtle but indelible. The training field stretched under a relentless autumn sun, dust rising in lazy clouds as squads maneuvered through updated protocols. Sergeant Elena Vasquez moved at the head of her K9 team during a joint urban simulation, her boots sinking into the packed earth. Rex's lead a steady extension of her arm. The dog's black and tan coat caught the light, his nose working the air with methodical sweeps, ears attuned to the crackle of simulated fire and shouted coordinates from the infantry. Perimeter clear! Advancing to breach point! Elena's voice cut through the radio static, crisp and unhurried. Rex paused at a chain-link mock-up. hackles rising faintly, a planted IED scent hidden in the underbrush. She signaled the all-clear with a gloved hand, and the squad flowed forward. M4s at low ready, the hum of distant rotors underscoring the drill's tension. No fences marked off-limits zones now. The revised guidelines, stamped with division approval, granted handlers discretion for verified alerts. Elena's log had seeded the change. Auditory cues weighted equal to olfactory, comms secondary in life-threatening immediacy. In the annex that evening, the air carried the familiar tang of kibble and harness oil, fans whirring softly against the cooling dusk. Elena unclipped Rex's vest, running a cloth along his flanks to wipe away the day's grit. Sergeant Malik entered, Luna trailing with a contented sigh, her paws padding lightly on the concrete. He set a folder on the grooming station, fresh printouts from JAG outlining the protocol's rollout across the 82nd. Divisions mandating it base-wide. Your breach? It's doctrine now. Handlers briefing next week, your lead instructor. Elena straightened, meeting his eyes with a nod. The weight of mentorship settled on her shoulders, not burdensome but earned, like the quiet trust Rex offered with every heel command. Team effort. Rex started it. The dog lifted his head from his water bowl, droplets scattering as he shook once, then settled at her feet, his warmth pressing against her boot. Malik chuckled low, a rare break in his reserve. Dog gets the credit, handler gets the paperwork. But seriously, platoon's stronger for it. No more blind spots in Zims. He scratched Luna's ears, the Belgian Malinois leaning into the touch, her eyes half closed in contentment. The K9 unit had tightened since the incident. Cross-training with infantry, shared logs emphasizing bonds that transcended ranks. Elena's story circulated in quiet barracks talks, not as legend but as lesson, duty's edge sharpened by conscience. Across base, the ripple extended. In the medical ward, PFC Ruiz had returned to light duties, his limp reduced to a faint hitch under the therapist's watchful eyes. He crossed paths with Elena during a routine supply run, crutches abandoned, uniform neat despite the desk job creases. "Sergeant," he said, saluting awkwardly in the corridor's fluorescent glow, the scent of antiseptic lingering. "Heard you're teaching the new protocols. If they ask for a demo, I'd vouch." She returned the salute, Rex sitting alert between them. "Appreciate it, Private. You're walking. That's the win." His gratitude had anchored her during the inquiry, a human thread pulling the institution toward equity. Now, it fueled quiet reforms. Logistics clerks briefed on zone hazards, patrols overlapping admin routes to prevent wanderings. No caricatures of blame, just procedural tweaks, the chain flexing without fracture. Captain Reed summoned her to operations the next morning, the tense canvas walls filtering the sun into diffused patterns on the map table. Coffee steamed in mugs, the aroma mingling with the earthy residue of yesterday's rain. He stood reviewing schedules, his posture as rigid as ever, but his eyes held a measure of appraisal when she entered. "Vasquez, at ease. Your first instructor slot. Handle it by the book. No improvising." "Yes, sir." She stood easy, Rex curling nearby, his tail thumping once against the floor. Reed's initial thunder had mellowed into this, oversight laced with respect, the reprimand a footnote in her file overshadowed by the commendation. "The updates? They're solid. Unit cohesion's up. Fewer halts in drills." He nodded, tracing a perimeter line on the map. "Learned that the hard way. Your call saved a man, nearly cost the team. Balance it right in the briefs." It was as close to endorsement as command allowed. Loyalty to the ranks demanding he adapt, just as she had. Outside, squads drilled under his watchful eye, the echo of boots a testament to the order refined, not rigid. The instructor session unfolded in the annex yard that afternoon. A dozen handlers and infantry reps gathered under the overcast sky, the air crisp with fallen leaves crunching underfoot. Elena demonstrated with Rex, a simulated cry piped through speakers, the dog's alert swift, her breach controlled within new bounds. "Assess, alert, act, comms if time allows," she explained, voice steady over the group's attentive murmurs. Questions came measured. How far to push instincts when protocol overrides? Rex demonstrated again, freezing at the sound, his body language a silent command to heed the unseen. Private Ellis from the Scouts approached afterward, notepad in hand. "That cry in the sim, spot on, makes us think twice about perimeters." His nod carried the platoon's shift. Elena no longer the outlier, but symbol, moral strength etched in every updated manual, every handler's gloved hand on a lead. As days blurred into routine, Elena's transformation deepened. Late evenings in quarters, she'd review logs by desk light, Rex dozing at her feet, his breaths even against the quiet hum of the base. The cost of integrity lingered in small ways. Sidelong glances from brass, the occasional extra report, but redemption bloomed in the bonds reinforced, mentoring Hayes on alert protocols, sharing patrols with Malik where Luna and Rex wove seamless patterns. The institution, vast and unyielding, had learned through her, conscience as ally, not adversary. One dawn patrol crystallized it. Mist clung to the fields as Elena and Rex swept the fence line. The same scarred barrier now patrolled routinely. A faint whine echoed from beyond, not human but a lost base cat tangled in brush. Rex alerted, and she investigated within bounds, freeing it with gloved care. No cries defied orders this time, just quiet competence, the line redrawn by her legacy. In the quiet breath before reveal, with Rex's head resting on her boot, Elena felt the full arc, from Defiance's isolation to Reform's quiet power. Her crossing had not broken the chain but tempered it, proving that within rigid systems, one act of moral courage could echo as enduring justice, loyalty's light guiding the ranks forward. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of "Do not cross that line," the commander ordered, but she crossed it when she heard the cry. See you in the next one. In the end, the fence stood as sentinel, but the true boundary lay in the heart of the handler, where orders met the unspoken vow to protect, forging legacies in silence and steel.